All right, Kevin back with you for another issue of the $1 Million Relationships podcast. And today I'm here with Greg Mohr. Greg, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Kevin, it's an honor to be here today. Thank you.
You bet. I have been looking forward to this. And you know what? We're just going to dig right in here and I'll start with a really simple and an easy question to kick us off. What do you do, Greg, and who do you serve?
Kevin, I create entrepreneurs through franchising. I serve anybody that's looking down the road in their life and thinking they're not quite going to be where they want to be in the future, and they are looking for options. Franchising is an excellent option for people to look at. There's probably a franchise out there for everybody, but everybody is not for franchising, and I help them determine that one way or the other.
Gotcha. So what inspires you most about the work you get to do and the impact that you get to make through all this, Greg?
Really helping people, change their lives and put it, go into a new course in
Okay.
their lives. Quite a few of my people have gone on to become rookies of the year in their franchise systems, and that's a really good feeling when they found that one thing that really resonates with them that they can actually, be recognized in the franchise system as doing so well. That's a great feeling
Yeah.
when people come back to me and tell me that.
Yeah. How did you happen to get into doing this line of work?
Well, Kevin, we'll have to go back into the Wayback Machine for that one.
Okay.
But we'll keep it short and sweet there.
That's all right.
Um, in a land not so far away, but a long, long time ago, we all got jobs back when we were 16. At the time, most of us got jobs at fast food places. Mine just happened to be Taco Bell.
Okay.
I think I knew the owners or they were hiring at the time, or a little bit of both. I moved up in the Taco Bell world and I found out that I was actually working for a master franchisor, and she owned 50 Taco Bells throughout
Oh,
the
wow.
Sacramento, California, and I was in Woodland, California at the time. So
Okay.
that was my first foray into franchising, and I learned what franchising was on that. So fast forward then, 30 years later, after being 30 years in the corporate world, I actually owned a dry cleaners, privately owned storage units, rental properties, doing all these things on the side. But
Okay.
with a friend, and the friend and I both got out of the corporate world at the same time. And that privately owned business was really cool, but it was really kind of a pain because I knew nothing about dry cleaning on that. So neither did he. So we kind of had to learn as we went. So I sold off all my half of everything to him, and I said, looking back in life, that franchising thing was one heck of a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. I said, I got to get back into that because I don't have the latest, greatest idea on what to do.
Okay.
So I went out, started searching for franchises. I went quick happy on the internet, had about 20 different franchise development people calling me. Finally got a hold of a franchise consultant who knew they existed. I did not at the time.
Ah,
And yeah, he said, whoa, take a step back and let's take a look at where have you been? Where are you at? Where do you want to be? And so we narrowed that list down. He put me into a Schooley Mitchell telecommunications consulting franchise. I help businesses with their phone bills. Think
okay.
of like car dealerships, office buildings that have lots of them. That was a lot of fun. I did that for a while, but I had to do a lot of driving around, and I was while I was doing that, I was thinking, that what that franchise consultant was doing was pretty cool. I mean, he really good use of your time because you sat at home and you just talked to people on the phone all day. So no, there's no interims of driving around where you didn't do anything. I thought,
Okay.
you know, I think I like that a lot better. I got to go back and say, bring me in, make me part of your organization. So I did that. I got rid of my Schooley Mitchell telecommunications consulting franchise, but I'll have to say, Dennis Schooley, for all of you folks out there, he really set the stage for what franchising was all about because he was a really good trainer, excellent individual, loved the franchising thing, and said, I got to get more people into this. I'm going to be a franchise consultant. So sold off my Schooley Mitchell stuff, went into franchise consulting 10, 12 years ago, and haven't looked back since.
Wow. Wow. Very cool. And the next question I want to ask you, I kind of have an inside track on this because you and we got to connect previously, and you shared a really cool story with me about somebody that you helped get into franchising, and not just and I know not everybody you help this way, but I hope you'll share that story again. But what is the result that you have helped a client get? That you are just like really incredibly proud of, Greg. And do you remember the story that you shared
Yep.
with me? Okay, all right, and you can share more if you want, but I hope you'll share that story too for sure. So
So As for you folks out there, what Kevin and I were doing, we're talking about the different things I did in franchising, and one of them was at one point in time, the Regis Corporation, they owned Supercuts, hair salons, Smart
Uh-huh.
Styles, hair salons inside of Walmart. They had a few thousand corporate locations that they wanted to sell off, so I was helping people get into those. I
Okay.
had a doctor come to me and say, I want to get into a lot of these. I want to get into like 100 of these because what I want to do is I want to set up an income flow that I can help underprivileged people get medical services on there. So I went through the process with him. I think we started off with about 20 of them,
Okay.
and we just kept getting more and more. And eventually, I think I got him up to about 80 on his own. And then after that, I think he took it upon himself to go out and get the other 20. I kind of helped him with some of that, calling up some of the people
Okay.
I'd put into Supercuts and saying, "You still like them, or you want to, or you decided it's not for you and you want to get rid of them? I got a buyer over here if you
Mhm.
want them." But that's his goal in life was not to make more money, was not to make a second income, but just to use that income to then help underprivileged people get the medical services they need, which I thought was just absolutely cool. I think it's the first person that ever came to me that wasn't looking to say, I just need to make some more money.
Yeah, yeah. And what a because when you shared that with me, I was just like, wow. For one, I never. Well, we should also say, over what period of time did you help this person open these 80 or these all these franchises? Because what was the time period?
So it was about a 2-year period that
Okay, yeah.
the Regis Corporation was selling them off. So what happened is he'd buy a group of them, and then rather than having to do all the work himself, then after I think about 7 of them or so, he'd bring in a regional manager, which was
Mhm.
actually fairly simple for him to do at the time because the Regis Corporation already had regional managers that were about to get laid off because their regional managers that they employed were not going to have a job because they're
Yeah,
selling all these units off to somebody
yeah,
else. So it was pretty easy to go back to the Regis Corporation and say who was the regional manager for these areas. Let me
yeah,
go talk to them, see if I like them, and I'll bring them into my organization.
yeah, yeah. And what was so fascinating was that, well, there was a few things about that. I mean, one, that this doctor, he wasn't necessarily looking to create a side income for himself, but he wanted to create a vehicle that would put off revenue so that he could do this other thing, which was really more of a passion project, a philanthropic project, to just make a bigger impact in the world. And he was a full-time practicing physician, so it's not like he's going to have time to work in these franchises himself.
Very true.
And so which brought up the point that you can own these franchises as well without having to be the one to work in them yourself and stuff. That is totally a possibility as well and stuff. And so, is there other examples? Because I know that's one that you and I talked about before, and definitely one I wanted to have you share. But is there other examples that might be great that you'd like to share of like clients that you've helped just get results for that you're incredibly proud of?
Yeah, one of my ones that I put into uh, what did she go into? She went into I believe it was a plumbing franchise. It was pretty funny because the
Okay,
gentleman had come to me and he said, I need something to do, semi-passive part-time. They're real estate investors. I got lots of real estate investors that come to me
okay,
because they work with a lot of these people already, and it's kind of just an add-on to what they're doing. And the wife, she ran all of the real estate portfolio, and it was just the husband. She was there with all of our meetings, and she asked lots of good questions. But I was taking them through the process. He said, semi-absentee, got to be semi-absentee. I'm going to do that. But we went through the process of learning about the franchise itself. And at the very end, the wife stood up and said, "We're not going to run that semi-passive. I can do that. It's easy. I'll take care of that one." And sure enough, she went in there. She ran it along with all of her real estate portfolio, and she became one of my people that became a rookie of the year doing it all herself.
wow,
But I thought it was just the funniest thing because she was out there, she was asking great questions. But she was mostly in the background. And then
yeah,
all of a sudden, she just stood up and said, "Hey, right here, I got that.
that
No
just
problem."
spoke to her and stuff.
It
Yeah,
did. It did.
wow,
And because people don't associate female with a plumbing franchise necessarily.
sure,
It's not one of the first things, but my people are so diverse and they've got so many talents that it doesn't matter, male, female, makes no
yeah,
difference in the world. Traditionally, man doesn't matter anymore.
yeah, yeah,
Certain things just resonate with certain people. So I never assume anything at all anymore. Just here's what's available
Yep.
out there. Let's see what resonates with you.
Yeah. And you know, you're so right, because you know, it used to be like, you know, these certain industries we just kind of thought were mostly male dominated. And you know, I mean, you think of construction maybe, you know. But you know what? I'll tell you, in this day and age, I mean, there's women in these industries too that are just kicking butt and taking names and just making a big name for themselves because they're having so much success, even though they might have once been a male dominated industry and stuff, you know. And it's pretty awesome. Did you want to chime in on that?
It's very true, Kevin. It's interesting that when I first started, I would say most of my folks were male that came in there looking for franchises. But
Okay.
and it was just been over the past 10 years that it's changed where, it does 50-50 probably.
Oh,
It's all mixed.
wow.
There
Okay.
just are just uh so many women that have done so many great things and have just run businesses within businesses. So
Uh-huh.
now they're thinking the same thing. So to me, it's no difference anymore. Male, female, I got everybody. That's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Wow. Very cool. Well, okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context set, I want to switch gears just a little bit. I want to start talking about relationships. And so, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, Greg, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Well, Robert Kiyosaki in his book Rich Dad
Oh,
Poor Dad was
yeah.
probably one of the biggest things that did it because I was getting my MBA at the time. I'd already got a degree in electrical engineering and physics,
Okay.
a bachelor's degree, and I went on to get my MBA. And I thought, okay, now I'm going to move up in the corporate world to get an MBA. I'm good to go. So I read his book, and that about ruined my corporate career for me in a good way. Because then I realized that, what he was saying was true. As I was going through the engineering world and even at using my MBA, in the corporate world, they say you're going to be an engineer one and you're going to make $100,000 for 3 years.
Mhm.
Then you're going to move up to engineer two. And for the next 3 years, you're going to make $125,000. And even if you had an MBA, well, it bumps you up a little bit. But I was looking down the road going, 10 years, 20 years down the road, I'm still at 200,000 or less. There's limits. There's a ceiling to it. And then Robert Kiyosaki's book came along. While I was reading that, while getting an MBA, and it just spoke to me and said, yeah, you're in the wrong segment or whatever it was
Yeah.
on there. You need to be in this one, not that one. And then that was it. That was it for my corporate career on that one. And I would say, we had talked about this before, but I didn't mention this part. I would say when I first started working at Taco Bell and working for that master franchisor, I think it was partly because of her too. As I thought about what you're asking me, it was partly her too. Her name was Kathy. I forget what her last name was,
Okay.
but she instilled in me the fact that she owned 50 Taco Bells and
Mhm.
that franchising was a good thing. So always in the back of my mind was the franchising business, for the 30 years that I was in corporate. And then Robert's book came along, and I think the two of them just kind of meshed and came together. And I realized, okay, now I know where to go. Franchising thing, you got to get a business going, get out of the paycheck. That's the route. That's the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? Back when I read that book, I think that book, I want to say it came out around, I don't know, 98, 99, 2000, somewhere around there. And I do remember at the time I owned a cleaning and restoration company. And that book really, I mean, so I would have been considered an entrepreneur, except for at that time I was working inside my business. I mean, I was going out on jobs all the time and all that. And so really I was more of an employee than an entrepreneur. I had created a job for myself. And but through that book, I really started to understand the difference between an employee and an entrepreneur and an investor. And so, yeah, it had such an impact on my life. And I look at, like, what's transpired over all those years since I first read that book. And it's been pretty phenomenal, the transformation that's taken place over those years, as it has been for you and stuff. And so if you look at, well, let me rephrase this. So what is an example of a situation or an experience where you personally, Greg, you got to make a really substantial impact? Maybe even in the moment, maybe it surprised you a little bit. You're just like, wow, look at what just happened there. And yet you also know that would have never been possible if not for, the relationship that you had with that first franchise owner that you were, Kathy, I think you said was her name, or because you read Rich Dad Poor Dad. What is an example of something like that where you got to make this really substantial impact?
Well, the first substantial impact was on myself
Yeah.
to begin with on that one. So, I was making, I think at the time I was almost 50 years old, and I was making, a little over 100,000 a year. Probably
Okay.
had $180,000 net worth
Okay.
for myself. And then within 8 years of going into franchising, I would now had over $1 million net worth from
Congratulations.
that. So yeah, and I thought that was just fantastic. We had a nice place out there in Texas. We had a house, 2,400 square foot house, 10 acres of land. Now we're sitting on 160 acres with the 3,500 square foot house. And in the engineering world, I was putting in from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay.
And then sometimes I had a crew over in China that I had to work with at night on there.
Oh,
So there was
okay.
10 hours plus a couple hours sometimes at night.
Hmm.
And now I'm putting in 10, 15 hours a week and making, you know, 5 times what I
Multiples.
was doing over
Yeah.
there with, you know, that 1/10 the hours or something, or,
Yeah.
a fraction of the hours that I was putting in before
Yeah.
on that. And it's happened with some of my people too. I had a gentleman that was, um, where he was a fundraiser for a nonprofit or a business, and he did a lot of traveling, a lot of networking, going
Okay.
around with people. And he and his wife just had a kid, and he wanted to do something different. So we got him into a kitchen remodeling franchise. So
Okay.
now he's at home all the time. Now he doesn't travel, gets to be home with the kid when he wants to, has a team of people that go out there. He just goes out, talks with his clients, and has a team of people that puts everything together and builds it so he can schedule his time whenever he wants around this kid. And he grew that business over 3 years to where he got to the point where he sold it off. He came back to me, let's sell it. Let's go find another franchise for myself. So we did that. We got that one sold, got him into another franchise where now he's really doing pretty much the same thing I am. He's doing a little bit better though, because now he's got a whole team of people that actually
Okay.
work for him. Well, I do everything myself. I never really
Okay.
got into the employees. I do it myself, but I'm okay with that. But he did really good because now he's got a whole team of people that are doing it, and now he steps away. Now he puts in the same amount of hours I do, 10, 15 hours a week on that, but he's got a whole nother business and a little bit larger franchise network growing now.
Okay.
So that was a real good feeling as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, for anybody that might be listening to this and thinking to themselves, man, Kev, I really love Greg. I love who he is. I love how he shows up. And maybe they're even thinking, you know what, some of the stuff that he shared, it's got me thinking too. And maybe they've been thinking about, like, another opportunity, but just didn't know how to go about doing it and stuff. What Anyway, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? Any website, any contact information we can share with folks?
Hey, you can just go out to my website, franchisemaven.com. That's
Okay.
franchise, MAV as in Victor, EN.com. Email me at greg@franchisemaven.com, or just pick
Okay.
up the phone and give me a call at 361-772-6401.
Perfect. Perfect. Any last thing that you feel led to share, Greg, before we call it a wrap?
Well, Kevin, most people don't know I exist, so thank you very much for allowing me to be on the show to let people
You
know I exist.
bet.
The other thing people don't necessarily know, which they ask me quite often, is how much do you charge? I do not charge anything. I am free.
Okay.
Franchisers pay me a referral fee if you decide, when and if you decide to invest in a franchise. So I always love talking about it. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I don't have an answering service. I answer my own phones.
Very good. Well, Greg, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I am excited to get this out there and share it with folks. So thanks so much, Greg.
Thank you for having me today, Kevin. I
You
appreciate it. It's been an
bet.
honor.
You bet.